Section 1.1, we're going to discuss what is the history of a Florida wind mitigation inspection. You may be wondering why this is important. As a home inspector, oftentimes clients from out of state will ask you, why do I have to do a wind mitigation and how did it start? When you have the answers to these questions, it makes you seem more professional and it gives them the ease that they're dealing with somebody who actually knows and understands their job. Also, these questions will be part of the final exam and they are important to know in order to be successful in this course. So, as boring as it is to read things word by word, we will go through it so that you can have a full understanding of what's involved and the history behind it. In the state of Florida, the wind mitigation reports can be traced back to the aftermath of Hurricane Andrew in 1992. This was one of the most powerful and destructive hurricanes in the state of Florida. It was a Category 5 hurricane, and it caused widespread destruction and resulted in significant insurance claims. As a result, legislators and insurance companies were forced to reevaluate their policies and risk management strategies. The state of Florida legislation passed the Florida Hurricane Catastrophe Fund, the FHCF, in 1993, which established a fund to provide affordable insurance coverage to Florida homeowners. The FHCF mandated that insurance companies offer discounts to homeowners who took measures to mitigate wind destruction, such as strengthening the roof and building the envelope of their home. These will be the factors that include the shape of a roof, how the roof is connected to the walls, what type of nails they use, opening protections, and several other items. In order to encourage homeowners to take these mitigation measures, insurance companies began offering discounts on premiums, that's insurance premiums, for properties that meet certain wind mitigation standards. In 2006, the Florida Office of Insurance Regulations, or the ORI, established a standardized form for wind mitigation inspections and required insurance companies to accept these forms when providing discounts. So later on, you'll learn that the standardized form is called an OIR form, and it comes from the Florida Office of Insurance Regulation. Going back into the text, over time, wind mitigation inspections have become more standardized, and inspectors must be licensed and certified by the state to perform these assessments. Today, wind mitigation reports are a crucial tool for property owners in Florida to reduce their insurance premiums and to protect their property against the risk of wind damage during hurricanes and severe weather events. Just a quick synopsis, the wind mitigation form was created by the state of Florida as a response to one of the most destructive hurricanes in the state's history. During that time, many insurers withdrew from the state of Florida or they ballooned and increased the cost of insurance. The state of Florida responded by creating a form that encouraged homeowners to mitigate the damage from high-speed winds. And as a result, the insurance companies were forced to give a discount for this. Who can perform these inspections? It is on the OIR form, and these are the people who can do it. A wind mitigation inspection can be performed by a building code inspector. It can be performed by a general, building, or residential contractor, caveats that is, or their employees, professional engineer, a professional architect, any other individual or entity recognized by the insurer as possessing the necessary qualifications to properly complete the uniform mitigation verification form, and obviously home inspectors. It's an important note that home inspectors cannot have their employees do it underneath their license. That is going to be reserved for general contractors, building contractors, residential contractors. So if you are a multi-inspector firm and you wish to employ somebody to do wind mitigations of 4 points, they cannot operate underneath your license. They must operate underneath their own. So what items are evaluated in the Florida Wind Mitigation Inspection? We're going to talk about the 7 items that we look for as home inspectors when performing a Florida Wind Mitigation Inspection. I believe it's very important to memorize these because almost on a daily basis, I get calls from potential clients wanting to know what I do during a wind mitigation, what I charge, and how long it's going to take. My ability to name these 7 things off the top of my head gives them the confidence that I'm a professional and qualified inspector. So remember, as we go over these are going to be a high view of what they are. We'll cover each one of these in a much more detailed view later on. So the first is going to be the age of the roof, next the roofing material, then the type of nail or nail spacing. After that, the roof to wall connection type. We have the roof shape, the underlayment type, and the window and door impact protection level. These make up the 7 factors that prevent a home from being damaged during high-speed wind events or a hurricane. So, in short, a Florida wind mitigation inspection is an assessment of a residential or commercial property's ability to withstand wind damage caused by a hurricane or other severe weather conditions. The inspection is performed by a licensed inspector who evaluates the structure's features and components and reports them back on the standardized form. This form is provided to or given to an insurance provider who then offers discounts based on the rating of each of these 7 categories. Remember, that form will be evaluated by an underwriter, and so it's very important to make sure that we give proof and documentation of each one of these 7 items, and that will be covered later on in the course. So, what form must be used to complete a Florida wind mitigation inspection? The OIR B1 1802 is the standardized form used to complete a residential inspection. If you click where it says View PDF, the document will pop up, and we can do a quick overview of it and a quick synopsis. Again, this is a high view. We'll go through everything in a much closer view. Like any other form, we have the basic details, the owner's name, address, city information, all of the above. The 7 categories that we discussed: building code, the year that it was built, the roof covering material, again, it could be shingle, concrete, metal, buildup, etc. The roof decking attachment, the type of nail and nail spacing, the roof to wall connection, which we'll discuss in great detail further, and the roof geometry, the shape of the roof, whether it has a secondary water resistance barrier, and the type of impact or lack thereof protection for the windows and doors. At the very bottom of this page, there's a place for us to sign our name as the inspector, our license number, what type of inspector we are, what our credentials are. And then lastly, there's a place for us to sign and a place for the homeowner to sign. So, summary of all of this is, in Florida, a wind mitigation inspection must be completed by using the Uniform Mitigation Verification Inspection Form, or the OIR B1 1802, which is a standardized form developed by the Florida Office of Insurance and Regulation. This form is used to document the wind resistance features of a residential or commercial property, and it includes sections for the following: the location and identification of the property, the roof covering and roof deck attachment, the roof to wall connections, the roof shape and geometry, the wall construction and secondary water resistance barrier, the opening protection for windows, doors, and skylights. And then once the inspection is completed, the inspector fills out the form and provides a copy to the property owner or the insurer as needed. It is important to note the OIR B1 1802 form must be completed by a qualified and licensed inspector who is authorized to perform wind mitigation inspections in the state of Florida, and the form must be signed by the inspector and the homeowner. I do want to make a special note that this form is often used as a residential form. If you're going to do a condo for an individual, you would use this form. However, if you're going to do a commercial building, oftentimes 3 stories or above, for the commercial property entity, you would use a different form, which we will discuss next. I want to briefly discuss in section 1.4 the Citizens Building Type 2 and Type 3 Mitigation Inspection Form. This is what I'm referring to as the Commercial Property Inspection Form. This form, recently, since the last hurricane, has become much more popular with the insurance agents, and they're requiring this for buildings 3 stories or taller, but only whenever documenting the structure for, like, say, an HOA, where they want to know about the whole building, not the individual unit. So before we jump into this report, I want to go down here and look at who can perform this type of inspection. At the bottom of the form, it states that this form can only be completed by a general or building contractor, by a building code inspector, a professional architect, or a professional engineer. And under each one of these, it lists the statute that you can look this up to see if you qualify. As a home inspector, you are not qualified to do this inspection. As such, if you get called or contacted and asked to do a commercial inspection, it's very important that you clarify with the client what type of form they're looking for. If that client is looking for a residential inspection form that we've been discussing, the ORI form, you are licensed to do that. If they are asking for the commercial inspection form for a commercial structure greater than 3 stories high that covers, the exterior of the building and all the units inside of it, you're not going to be qualified unless you hold one of the licenses below. This form, so if you don't, go ahead and skip this section. But this form will be covered in greater detail at the end of the course as a type of bonus. The primary focus of this course is going to be on the ORI form. So jumping up here just to look at some of the differences in this form, it's a lot less detailed than the residential form. They want to know, the number of stories, and then each one of these requires a reference that we'll get into greater detail later. But your building type, 4 to 6 stories or 7 or more, your terrain exposure, you will have to use a terrain exposure map, a certification of wind speed, and that will basically be determined by the age of the building. That takes some investigation that you have to do. The roof covering material, again, they want to know the style, the date of installation, and then you've got a level A and a level B. There's some definitions that you have to go through, and a decking attachment, an underlayment attachment, and then the opening protections. And again, this is for the entire building. So, you may be looking at a building with, 13 stories high, and this is going to matter for all windows and doors. Again, down here, it lists the certifications to fill this form out. If you don't meet those, don't try to do the form. Make sure you clarify ahead of time when working with these HOA associations or building managers. If it's not an individual owner, if it's a general owner, just make sure you ask that question ahead of time, because since Hurricane Ian, the requirements have changed slightly. Again, we're going to focus on the ORI. This will be reviewed in detail at the very end of this course as a bonus. Let's review what tools are required to perform a wind mitigation. The first and most obvious is going to be a ladder. In my opinion, the expandable A-frame ladder is your best option, as it allows the ladder to collapse and be smaller than normal, which allows you more maneuverability when inside of a house or a condo. Also, due to its size, you can work out of any type of vehicle. It lends itself well to a small Corolla, sedan-style vehicle, or it lends itself well to a larger truck. The next thing that you'll need is a stud finder in order to locate the nails within the truss. The Zircon MT6 is the only approved stud finder for wind mitigation inspections. As such, you'll have to get one of these in order to perform the inspections correctly. Next, you're going to need some type of measuring device in order to show the spacing between the nails. Showing the spacing between the nails is a requirement for the photographs. Standard tape measure works well. A ruler has its benefits. If you utilize a thin metal ruler, you can also stick it between the joint of the roof decking, and you can show the spacing or the width of the decking. And there's a self-adhesive measuring tape. The benefits of this are once you put it on the truss, you have both hands available to work within the attic, giving yourself more maneuverability. You'll need some kind of device to take photographs, either a cell phone or a standard camera. The benefits to a cell phone are that if you have an app on that phone that works for doing wind mitigations, you can automatically load those photos into the app, saving yourself considerable amounts of time. A standard camera, more than likely, will have better resolution, a better zoom, and depending on what you have attached to it, you can have a better flash. The downside is you will have to take the extra time to load those photos onto a computer or phone in order to put them into your software. A flashlight is a great tool. I recommend a flashlight that has a field of light that can be changed to wider or tighter in order to take tight photographs of the roofed deck, the straps or the clips. Next, you'll need a marker, some type of device to indicate where the nails are on the trusses. I've tried to go with other markers. Sharpie always ends up being the best, most reliable without damaging the pen. If you need to measure the distance or the perimeter of the home, a trundle wheel is going to be required. Trundle wheel, simply this pole will extend. You'll reset this counter to 0. And as you walk the perimeter of the home, measuring each wall, it'll add up the amount of feet that you've walked. First, you should walk the whole perimeter of the home, mark down the total perimeter, then reset it back to 0. And you can walk off all of your non-hit features, and you can mark that down, and that'll give you a percentage of non-hit features that you have. An optional tool is a cut 2x4. I recommend this tool because when you're working inside of an attic, a lot of times we're trying to walk on the trusses, and if you were to slip or lose your position and you kick the ceiling drywall, you're going to be responsible and liable for fixing that damage. So by using a piece of 2x4 that's cut wider than the truss, when you get into a tight spot and you're trying to take your photographs or move or maneuver, you can set that down and rest with your knees and know that you're not going to kick out the ceiling drywall. Another great tool that's optional is a camera pole or a selfie stick. As you see in this photo, you can put the camera or the phone on one end and you can control the pictures on the other end. This works really well in tight attic spaces. I've also successfully used the pole to move insulation away from the metal connectors, and that is one of the major problems that I have, is that I can almost get far enough into the attic to see my metal connector, but I can't quite move that insulation. Sometimes you grab the insulation and you try to pull it back, and it's so old that it just tears. So having some type of stick or device to move that away is great. And then having that phone right there where you can maneuver it in between the insulation and the truss is also very beneficial. And then lastly, we have a slide ruler. Slide rulers are used to measure the thickness of the roof decking. So what you'll do is you'll take this piece and set it to 0, and then you'll stick the piece in between the joint of the roof decking. And as it goes down, it will move this slide piece down to the thickness of the roof decking. You can also use this double up to measure your nails as well. And that concludes the tools. So let's discuss the consequences of putting inaccurate information on a wind mitigation form. Providing inaccurate information on a Florida wind mitigation form can have serious consequences for both the inspector and the property owner. The purpose of the wind mitigation form is to accurately document the wind-resistant features of a property, and any inaccuracies can result in an incorrect discount or claim, which can lead to significant financial losses. If an inspector knowingly or negligently provides false information on a wind mitigation form, they may be subject to disciplinary action by the Florida Department of Business and Professional Regulations, DBPR. This is the association that holds your license. And this can include fines, license suspensions, or even revocation of the inspector's license. For the property owner, inaccurate information on a wind mitigation form can result in denial of discounts on insurance premiums, which can result in higher insurance costs. Inaccuracies can also result in insurance claims being denied or not fully covered, leaving the property owner to bear the financial burden of repairs or replacement. In some cases, if it is determined that the inaccuracies were intentional or fraudulent, the property owner may be subject to legal action and could potentially face fines or other penalties. Therefore, it is crucial for both the inspector and property owner to ensure that the accurate and truthful information is provided on the wind mitigation form to avoid any negative consequences. I've done literally thousands of wind mitigation inspections, and in that time, I can tell you that I've probably been asked 100 or 200 times to provide fraudulent or fake information. I've had people try to bribe me. The thing to remember is, just like it states, that this form is a legal document, and I put a copy of the bottom of it, that you sign your name to this legal document, and above it, it states this: an individual or entity who knowingly or through gross negligence provides false or fraudulent mitigation verification form is subject to an investigation by the Florida Division of Insurance Fraud and may be subject to administrative action by the appropriate licensed agency or to criminal prosecution under this Florida state statute. The qualified inspector who certifies this form shall be directly liable for misconduct of employees as if the authorized mitigation inspector personally performed this inspection. What that's saying is that if you provide false information through gross negligence or through just outright fraud, you have committed an insurance fraud, which is a crime in itself that you could be, not only can you lose your license, which in many cases is going to be your livelihood, but you could also go to jail for it. I've been offered as much of $1,000 in order to provide false information. That $1,000 is never going to make up the amount of money that I'm going to make as a home inspector. I would never sacrifice my home inspection license for a quick $1,000. Not only that, but if it was found out through, and this is a great example. I had a woman call me before Ian 2 weeks prior, and she had built the lower section of her house. It was a stilt house. So everything on the top floor had proper wind mitigation. All the windows, doors, everything were impact rated, but the bottom levels had been built out and she was illegally renting them, and she didn't have shutters on a few windows and doors. She had called me multiple times complaining, telling me that my report, she didn't agree with it because the upstairs was done and the downstairs weren't, licensed buildings. And at the end, she offered me, I don't know, I think it was like $500 if I changed a report in her favor. And I told her, just like I told you, man, there's no way that I would sacrifice my license and, the option of going to jail in order for you to save a few $100s a year. It doesn't make sense to me. And then Ian hit, and her house was the lower level was destroyed. So if later on an insurance carrier came back and reviewed that property and found out that I had provided a fraudulent report, it's my opinion that I would have not only lost my license, but have been in much greater trouble than that $500 would ever be worth to me. So keep that in mind that, when you're doing this, that person, they're going to pressure you to put something on the report that's not true, but we don't know those people. We're never going to see them again. And the fact that they have to pay $300 more a year on a premium, while that may suck for them, it's not going to be as terrible as us no longer being able to have a license and work in this profession. So take it seriously and only provide truthful information. Next, what happens if we provide incomplete, not enough information? This is much less serious. Below, I provided a letter from an insurance carrier for a report that one of my inspectors did where he didn't provide any proof of the impact windows or doors. So the wind mitigation report is sent to the client, who provides it to their insurance agent. The insurance agent will provide a quote based on the information on the report, and then the insurance agent will provide a premium based on the information. Basically, all I'm saying is when we go and we do our inspection, we give the client a wind mitigation form. That client then gives it to their insurance agent. That insurance agent doesn't check our report for accuracies. They look at it, and whatever on there, they just ride with it. That's good for them. And they may assign all the discounts that you've given. But then what happens in this next section is down the road, our wind mitigation report will be reviewed by an underwriter. And that underwriter who works for the insurance company is going to try to pick our report apart, because they want to make sure that they're not giving out any type of discounts to a client that they don't deserve, because the goal of an insurance company is to make money. So what will happen in this case is you give to the client, your client gives it to the broker gives them the discount. 3 months later, the adjuster reviews it and they say, no, this is wrong. And then they kick it back. And in this case, the inspector did not provide proof that the windows and doors were impact rated. They didn't show proof through a permit, a label, window etching, none of that. So the client had previously been given a premium, and now the premium is increasing by $283.93. They got to pay that amount of money every year. As you can imagine, the client's not happy. They came back and said, hey, you guys didn't do this report properly. It's going to cost me $284. You need to fix the problem. So, let's take a look at this. This came from Access Insurance, and it's just a basic letter that says, wind mitigation did not provide photos of the windows and door label on the door to verify that the unit qualifies for opening protection. We have removed the credit. This is the amount of change. Linda, whoever from the underwriting department. So in this particular case, what had happened was the exterior of the building was having concrete restoration, and the inspector could not actually go out or open the doors. They weren't allowed to open the doors. So they had to go back and just take photos of the etching. It was a simple mistake, but these are the consequences. So keep in mind, once again, that we're all going to make mistakes, and we need to make sure that we provide a complete and thorough inspection so that we don't have to make retrips, which then cost us more money, and that we're always providing truthful and honest information, because anytime that we do something with the intent to deceive, we're putting our license at jeopardy. If you've enjoyed this video, please take a moment to like and subscribe to this channel. We'll continue to upload videos regarding the home inspection process and things that relate to the home inspection field. Also, if you want to get DBPR continuing education credits for this course, head over to inspectionlink.com and sign up for the course.
We're going to provide you with additional videos showing you how to perform each type of inspection for different types of properties. So there'll be examples of houses, condos, modular homes, different connection types, different roof types. And we're going to try to show you the process where you follow an inspector one-on-one through each type, and then we show you how to complete the form for each type as well. Thanks for watching the video. We hope to see you again.